Well, hello, and welcome to another great episode of The Color of Motion. My name is Don Terrell, and I am so excited for everybody to be joining us today. I hope everybody's having a great Saturday wherever you are, staying safe and getting ready to have some fun going into this Christmas holiday season. You know the drill. When you come on, please let me know where you're tuning in from, who you are, so I can show you some love for sure. Of course, you also know the drill. I'm doing housekeeping, make sure that I'm broadcasting live on all my channels. You can join me live on Facebook, YouTube, or my LinkedIn channel for sure. And I am broadcasting on LinkedIn. Make sure that I am broadcasting. Make sure that you share the broadcast as well, because sharing is caring for sure. So please let me know who you are, where you're tuning in from, so I can show you some love. One more channel to check to make sure that I am broadcasting live. I hope you are as excited as I am, because I am so excited to sit down and chop it up with my friend here. He is a very, very talented character animation, and you're getting ready to see some of his great work for sure. Okay, let me see here. Am I broadcasting on my LinkedIn? I'm broadcasting on LinkedIn. I typically, so just so you know that I'm not ignoring you, I am checking on my other monitor there. Got a few people. Make sure that you say hello, and we appreciate you so much for tuning in. Miss Salve, I'm tuned in, future guest in the new year. I'm so excited to be having her on pretty good soon. Salve, appreciate you tuning in so much, Salve. Okay, almost ready to go here. And we will be ready to rock and roll. This is always such a hard thing when you don't have a technician to kind of handle this for sure, and you're doing it basically on your own, having to jump between. So just so you know that I'm not ignoring you, like I said, I'm just checking all my other channels on my other monitor, and I am broadcasting live. Again, my name is Don Terrell, and you are tuning in to The Color of Motion, where I highlight and interview people of color from diverse backgrounds in the field of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. This space that I love so much and enjoy. So I want to make sure that I highlight the people that I've been able to connect with that are doing such great work. And like I said, I am so excited to have my friend on to sit down and talk about a lot of different things going on for sure. We broadcast again every Saturday, 3 p.m. Make sure that you connect with me on all my channels here, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, to make sure that you get the notifications of when we go live. All right, ready to rock and roll. So before I bring on my very special guest, I want to show you what type of work that he does. And I'm sure that you have seen his work out there, and does such an awesome work. So check this out.
How did you lose your last two limbs, Gobber? Oh, it was a pageant.
Gobber?
Huh? Hiccup.
Well, yeah, that's. Gee, I never would have thought of that.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Why wasn't I invited? Thank you. Why can't you be more like good guy?
Die, you evil beasts with twisted souls! Vikings will forever swim in rivers of your blood! With his gentle touch.
So as you can see, my man does some serious work here. Awesome work. I am so excited again to be chopping it up with my friend here. A Chilean-born animator who's worked on a variety of projects, as you can see, a variety of projects including advertising, games, shorts, worked in big studios and small studios, and as a freelancer and a generalist, and a comper and animator. The last 3 years, he's been focused on character animation, working in the visual effects and animated feature films space. Outside of work, he loves traveling, which we're going to talk about because he's getting ready to do a little traveling, and hanging out with friends, playing VR games, and meeting new people. Please, everybody, help me welcome my friend and very special guest, Luciano Muñoz. Luciano,
Hey,
man, what's going on?
it's all good. How you doing, Don?
Oh, everything is great. And how is everything on your end?
It's good. Good stuff are happening. I think it's gonna be a strong 2021. I'm super happy to finally finishing this year.
I think
Everybody is.
yeah, I think everybody is ready to kind of end this year and go into the next one. Even though we're still kind of dealing with it a little, I think it's been a rough year for a lot of people. And with the holidays coming up, everybody is just so ready to go into a new year for sure.
Yeah, I was telling a friend a couple of weeks ago. I hope this doesn't become that thing that in 5 years from now we go like, do you remember good old 2020?
For sure. It's definitely going to be a mark in history. I mean,
Definitely.
we've never had anything quite like this that we've dealt with as far as a pandemic worldwide and people being under lockdown so many times and people losing their lives and just things going on. So it's definitely going to be a moment in history for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Miss Sharon, I appreciate you tuning in. Remember, make sure that you let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. Tuning in from LinkedIn. I appreciate that so much. Now we're getting ready to sit down and do a little chopping up here. Obviously, from your work, you do some great character animation and that type of work. What kind of got you started in this space in the first place? I mean, were you always artistically inclined? Did you know that this was something that you wanted to do? You know, when you
It took some time, I would say. So there's like a long story, right? I'm gonna try to tell this as short as I can, but it can get really long. But back when when I finished school, I was about to finish, and I didn't really know what to study. I knew that I had some artistical inclinations, but also some technical ones. So like 2 or 1 year before deciding where I was going to, I had in mind either like design, and in the other hand I had like programming, something like that, like engineering, computer engineering or something like that. But none of both like would fit me completely. Not at that point. I didn't know much about them either. I just like had a like typical, like when you're in school, you really don't know anything about the world. You don't know anybody that does those stuff.
yeah.
And so I was kind of like in between. And there was this one friend that was going to study just 1 year earlier than I was, and he showed me like a program for a school like he was going, and he was taking this program called audiovisual communication, where they would have like cameras and post-production and 3D and design and a little bit of programming and a little bit of Flash and a little bit of everything. It was like a real potpourri of all of the things that I found interesting, like video and directing and writing and post-production, like all of the things that I'm interested in, like really. And so I took this program, which was like 4 years. And as I went in there.
Now, this was in Chile?
Yes, this was in Chile, just after I finished like high school, right? And so when that came up, I was like, okay, cool. Like I started learning a little bit about everything I was interested in. So that was great. And as the time passed and I started studying there, I started kind of diving into the computer work. Like I was always very homey, so having a computer at home would mean like I could just like sit down and do my stuff and like investigate more because when you go to university, there's a lot of that the teachers give you, but they don't give you everything. It's like a brush of a bunch of things. And the good thing about this area particularly is that you didn't need much more than internet connection and a computer to just explore more. So back in those times, like I would just like read tutorials, and back then, like you had Andrew Kramer doing his first tutorials. And I remember for like the first year that I met Andrew Kramer, like Andrew Kramer's work, I think that he had done like 6 tutorials and then didn't do anything else. But I lived off of those tutorials for so long, right? And like a sky replacement and stuff like that. So there was stuff that I could plug into my classes, to my everyday needs from his knowledge. And slowly more people popped up here and there, but he was kind of like the first one that was like really key for everyone, right? Yeah. And as time went by, I started being interested in 3D and motion graphics. I had a friend that was really good at motion graphics, and he would do like stuff for a what's it called, like a discotheque that had like big budgets, and they would do like massive events, and he would always do these beautiful graphics. And I was like, oh man, that sounds so cool. Like I want to try that. So I would try and follow his lead kind of. And so I experimented with After Effects back then. Obviously, I was doing Premiere and Final Cut and whatever I could. Like at the university, you had computers to play with, so you could do that stuff too. And so time passed, and there was this 3D class that I really was looking forward to taking, because I had already like checked out like 3ds Max. I wasn't even 3ds, like it was 3D Max for DOS, right?
Yeah.
And I played with that. I found that was amazing. And you could do like a logo and make it thicker and turn it around. I was like, whoa, this is great. And so that was super exciting, right? And so I missed the class. I couldn't get into that class in university because it got filled really quickly. So a month or two passed, and one day I got home from university, and my mom at that time, I was living only with her, had found like in a newspaper there was somebody doing like a very like tiny course like on Saturday mornings for like 3 months, and it would give you basically an understanding of how CG works. I'm like, that sounds cool. It was affordable, so I said like, yeah, I'm super up for taking it. So I took that class, where we went from a little bit of modeling, a little bit of rigging. Like the guy that taught there had done a short film, and he was really good. But that was my biggest point of reference at that point, right? Yeah. Obviously, I had seen Pixar movies and stuff like that, but that was a dream. Like I had not even an intention of even thinking about working on something similar. And one of the things that I really learned with that course, that one of them was that I really liked the entire process of 3D, of film production, but he also opened my eyes to see that outside of Chile there were schools and there were people that actually did this for a living. Yeah. And he introduced me to the CG Talk forums back then.
Yeah.
And we're talking like 2005 or 2006, right?
Yeah.
And I started going into forums on internet and looking at, oh, there's other people. Oh, look at these people doing like amazing stuff. And then there was like 3D World or something like that, and like 3D Total, and there was a bunch of things going around it. And so there was this other guy, like later down the road, that was doing these very short core classes, like 3-hour classes for like $10, but it was in another city. So I would take one of those classes and like go on bus, like 2 hours bus, get into that class, stay during the morning. Luckily, that's the Santiago, the capital. So I had family there. I could visit some friends. And so I would do that. I would take a Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, or maybe Friday or the whole weekend and go there. And this guy had studied at this school in Vancouver, Canada, called Vancouver Film School. And so I remember the last class I was with him, he was talking about his experience going there and how he had gotten a grant and stuff like that. And so I went and asked him, like, well, like, this seems like the right thing for me. Like, I want to study this. And he went like, he was teaching mostly visual effects stuff, right? Like he would do a demo of like a flying saucer flying over like a mountains or something like that, and he would do that based on a picture and then like some geometry and then just make it pretty enough that looked okay. And I'm like, that this is really something I want to do. So I talked to him and he's like, yeah, well, you can check out the school, blah 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 blah. And so I looked at the school and it was incredibly expensive. And that's why also he had gotten like a scholarship. It was a massive scholarship. And so I come back to my mom and she goes like, well, it's impossible that we can afford it. There's no way you're going to that school, to that program. So I'm a bit down about this, but time had passed. And the same guy pointed me out to another guy that had just gotten a scholarship to go there. And I'm like, are you serious? And so I talked to this other guy. He's like, yeah, I just got a scholarship and the school is giving out scholarships to people. So it's basically depends on the program that you can get more or less. And I found that they had this character animation program, which was like 6 months, was I don't know, something like 16,000 Canadian at that time. And I think the program doesn't exist anymore, sadly, because it was really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's way less than the other one. The other program that I wanted originally was 56, so that was unpayable, right? This one was 16, and if you applied to a scholarship, you could get like half the price on it. And so then I went back, I talked to my mom, and she's like, well, that actually could work. So why don't you try? Why don't you apply? Let's see what happens. If you get the scholarship, then we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
So put together a portfolio, like did some, like at that time I was very into After Effects. I was working like part-time in a internet cafe, you know, like those internet that were very popular in 2000s.
Yeah.
You go and connect to internet. And also I was working at a small discotheque, like that was close to my place, where they were doing electronic music parties. So I was working as a VJ every other Friday or something like that, when they would have like special events. So I would create graphics and mix them up live. And I felt like the king of the world.
Yeah.
And so that happened, and I got the scholarship, and my mom was like, well, now's a good time as any. So I finished my course, and I went there in 2007, mid 2007. But it was interesting because I wasn't going for my interest in character animation. I was going because I wanted to learn Maya and learn 3D, but the program that would be more broad, I couldn't afford, so I went for this. And suddenly I found this teacher, Steve, that was really, really an amazing animator. Like everyone was an amazing teacher there, but this particular teacher kind of made me fall in love with animation. And so after taking that class with him, I came back to Chile about a year later, because I ended up staying for other reasons, and came back to Chile, and all I wanted to be was an animator. And so I found this this roadblock there, that there was not much animation work. Back then, it was super expensive to do character animation because it takes so long. Doing quality characters was super hard. It's still hard, but now there's more people that know how to do it. And so I started working in the stuff that I knew already, like compositing and being a generalist and stuff like that. So I learned enough to be able to do like renders and do a little bit of modeling and a little bit of texturing, a little bit of everything. And so I started working on that line of work, and that's when I started getting hired for doing advertising work. And I got hired by this semi-big company. It's a big company in Chile, or at least back then, that would do film. Like imagine kind of like a sort of like a MGM house, like where they have like shooting studios and TV studios and like post-production and production, blah, blah, blah. So I worked in that studio, but they had like a really small 3D team. And I wasn't even in the 3D team. I was in the compositing part, but I was friends with everybody. So it was easy to get a hold and sometimes like dive into 3D, but I would do mostly compositing. And after they let me go, it was like March 2009, 2009. I got let go, and I got hired by a small studio that was doing an advertising. They needed character animators, so I got there with my friend, and we worked on there for a month. And then my boss from that old studio, he was really heartbroken that they had let me go, because the studio was kind of going down slowly, and they started letting people go very quickly. And he recommended me for a job in Peru, and I was like, well, a job in Peru, that sounds cool. Like I already know the people I'm working with, so taking another job is not a big deal. And that job that I had at that moment was like a month only. It was like a freelance, right? So I went to Peru. I started working there as a compositor as well. Worked there for about 3 months. I wasn't sad about it or super excited about it. It was like kind of like in the middle. I was like, okay, cool, this worked. I made a bunch of great friends, but one particular that I still keep today as a very close friends. In fact, in 2017, I lived with this guy in Spain. Because we were so good friends, and we always kept our friendship, and we always like play games together and stuff like that, even if like he was for some time in Peru, and then he was in Argentina, and I was in Chile, and then he was in Belgium, and I was still in Chile, and then was traveling and so on. So it gave me if it gave me something, was like good friends that I still cherish to this day, and that I still work with sometimes. Like he is a sound designer, and I work with him whenever we can. So it's good stuff. And so I started diving more and more into character animation slowly as there more jobs on that pop out. And at the beginning of 2010, I got a scholarship to go to a school in Denmark that had like a little 3 months program, because I had not done much character animation for all of this period. I was like, I need to get back in the game. I need something to push me a little bit forward. And so I got that scholarship, and I went over there, and I loved it. Again, met so many great people, and people that I find in the industry today that we meet in festivals, or sometimes like here in London, I have 1 or 2 friends that are from there. And I started diving again into character animation after 9 months, because I came for 3 months, but ended up staying around Europe 9 months. I went like backpacking and stuff. And I was working freelance for ex-clients from Chile. So I was lucky that they would keep sending me work. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll do that in my laptop, like in a bar, having a beer, and then send the work over and keep on traveling. So because like my expenses were really minimal, as I had met already so many people in Denmark and previously in Vancouver, a bunch of them were scattered around Europe. So they would say, hey, you can come to my place like for a week if you want. I'm like, cool. I would travel to a country, stay for a week there at their places. And then if I had more money, I would push my ticket forward like a couple of weeks later and just go visit another friend. And when money was running out, I would get really nervous. And then suddenly, like a check from a previous work would come in. I was like, "All right, cool. I can stay a little bit more." I did that for like 9 months, imagine.
Well,
And
you seem to have a broad skill. Getting there. Hopefully, it's not on my side. A little echo there. But as far as not just doing, because like you said, you did a lot of visual effects work and comping and that type of work. So you seem to have a real broad set of skills, not just specifically animating, but working with live video as well. Do you enjoy, well, obviously you love character animation, but do you think it's a good thing that you've got this set of broad skills of working with live video or working in say After Effects and some of the other programs?
I think it helps depending on what you want. Like I used to after like the this period that I mentioned, I went back home and I started having a small studio. And I started a studio with 3 friends, and my other friend was one of them was like full on character animator. He would do nothing else but that. The other one was full on like modeler, plus he was like great at lighting and rendering. And I was kind of like a person that would wear many hats, but mostly out of needs. Like because at the studio when we were trying to get started our thing together, we were, for instance, the modeler got a really cool model going, and I'm like, okay, we need to animate, but we need to hire a rigger. Damn it, that bureaucracy of like asking for permission to somebody else to be able to animate your character.
Yeah.
So instead of hiring a rigger, I was like, let's try to rig it. So we started like diving into like auto rigs and stuff like that. And so I learned a little bit of that. And then we would animate, and then it's like, okay, we need to do this other thing. And for instance, with the compositing as well, I knew a little bit of compositing, but we needed, for instance, we did this little piece where we shot with the camera and on our studio, and then we made this dancing character. And so I had to learn how to track the camera and like create the planes and stuff like that. It wasn't my thing, but I thought it was cool to learn, so I just did that. And we just experimented with all of these things. And so I think it does help a lot. Obviously, again, that it depends on what are you focused on. Because, for instance, I have friends. I worked at Framestore here in London, and I have friends that they are character animators. They learn character animation at school. They came out of school. They're working at Framestore, full-on character animator, and they're excellent. Like really, really incredible. And I think that's also a good way. But if you're going to work at Framestore, you really don't need many other skills besides the one that you're hired for, unless you want to do something at home or something like that.
Yeah.
In the same fashion, I have another friend that also we worked at Framestore and we worked at DNEC together recently, and he was I think he took an internship at Pixar for rigging, but he's an amazing character animator. He's an amazing rigger. He's an amazing modeler. He's an amazing designer. And I'm like, oh, well, what can't you do, man? And he also has great taste, which is also very important because it mixes it all together.
Yeah.
And so I think it depends on what you're aiming for. Like this guy does a lot of his own projects and like he creates his own characters and does beautiful animation pieces, and he does beautiful animation short films and stuff like that, all on his own at home. And so if you're only a character animator, you're basically living off of what characters are available, or if you can get somebody to design your character and then model it and then rig it, and then so you can finally do your thing, so then you can get somebody to light it and render it. And so while I had my own studio, I also was teaching classes in a few universities back home that had like introduction programs and stuff like that. And one of the things I would tell them, because our market was so small, it was much more convenient for somebody to learn a little bit more than just the focus. Like if you are a character animator, maybe if you learn a little bit of rigging, it benefits you, because if a studio that's a small studio that's maybe 10 or 5 people or something like that, they want to do character animation for the first time, instead of hiring a rigger and an animator, they can hire you. You can rig your characters because you're going to animate them. You know what the constraints are, like what the problems will be. You know how to animate that character the best in one sense, because you're adapting it to yourself. And so you're giving that option of like, hey, don't hire two people, you can hire me. Obviously, I'll work for longer, or you pay me more, whatever. But it just opens more work opportunities. And so, in my case as well, a lot of the times when I work as freelance, sometimes they ask me to model something, and I hire a friend to model because if it's a complex model. But for instance, 3 weeks ago, when I was in November, an old client called me because he needed to do some like kind of motion graphic stuff, and it was basically like a coronavirus with like little balls. And I was like, I can do that. Like, like it's not too complicated. It's like spheres with nice render, and that's it. So like putting some lights, making it pretty enough. They had, obviously, when you work in advertising, like you have like a not color scripts, but like concepts, kind of concept design, like color, like boards.
story.
Yeah, exactly. Like those style boards and stuff like that, where they define already the coloring, how it should look, etc., etc. So with those boards, like it was like, that's my reference. Good stuff. Like it's a matter of like moving parameters until it looks more or less like what they want, and then we can move on, right? And so that helps. Like again, it depends a lot on what you want to aim for. And if you're starting in a small country or in a small city where there's not a lot of work around and you want to be able to get hired, then definitely learn a little bit more. Like just go out of your way. You're passionate about this, so just go a little bit out of your way, because also that helps when you're at a higher stage. Because for instance, right now I'm an animator in this small studio I was telling you from the Netherlands, and there our team is quite small. We're going to be at some point something like 10 animators, right? And my supervisor, he's amazing, and we got another lead, and I'm one of the leads, mostly because of the experience I have, not because I'm really good. But the good thing I've found in this case is because I know about rigging, and I know about modeling, and I know about all the other areas. I work a lot as a liaison with the rigging team, so they can cater to what we need. And if we need to explain something really particularly, and usually there's a barrier between animators, riggers, and modelers, because it's hard to communicate because there's three really, really different areas, right? And so I can serve a lot of the times as a help to communicate these departments and come across with the ideas that we need to convey to them, for them to cater to what we need, so we do better animation in shorter time. So I mean, it's always good to know more than to know less.
Yes.
If you want to focus on one thing, by all means, and you want to be the best at the one thing, by all means. But it helps to have some extra knowledge. In one more small story about this, I had a few friends that worked at a small studio back in Chile, and in Chile usually the studios are really small. So this studio, they were doing a series, and there was a bunch of animators that were hired just to finish up the series. And one of them, like at some point, they were like, "Okay, we're pretty much done with the series. We're gonna start another project, and we're gonna finish the compositing part and whatever." So they kind of went one by one. It's like, "Do you know how to animate?" Or like they were animators. Like, "Do you know something else about animation?" "No, I don't know anything." "Okay, goodbye." "You know something else?" "I know a little bit of modeling." "Okay, we'll call you in the next project." You know something else?" "I know compositing." "Cool. Stay on. You can work in the rest of the project as a comper if you want." Cool. And so that sometimes, obviously, again, I'm talking about smaller studios. That helps. And even further at Animal Logic, I met a couple of people that had two specialties. Like one guy that was a rigger and also a comper, and he basically was hired for rigging, and then when he finished rigging, comp was just starting. So they rolled him off to comping, because for them also it was easier than like to bring him on than to send him off to whatever country he was from and then break somebody else, right? They already had the visa done and everything. And same deal with another guy that was really good at layout and animation and lighting. And he would sometimes get hired as one, sometimes as another one, sometimes as another one. So it just opens more possibilities.
So I mean, and I don't think a lot of people kind of get it. I mean, they see the end product when it comes to animated films and things like that, and don't really sometimes get the work that's involved in it. What's the biggest challenge for you when you're giving a character Is it? I mean, do you go through the process of getting inside the character's personality, doing all the acting out of the scenes, recording yourself and things like that?
I try. I have to be honest. Like, I'm character animation wise, like in the later years, that I've actually focused on character animation because, as I said before, even though I was interested and I was starting back in Chile, it was very odd jobs. Like, it was like once or twice a year that I would get a character animation job. So I didn't grow that much in that area, and so I only started to consider myself really a character animator in the last 3 years, right? And one of the things that has been hard for me is like get off the old bad habits that I did have.
Yeah.
Because back before, I didn't shoot reference, I didn't plan my animation, I would just go and dive in and get it done. Also because the constraints, like when I would work in advertising back then, first of all, like character animation quality wasn't too high. So it was really rare that a client would say, oh no, that it's not moving correctly. It was super rare. They would usually be fine with what you would do as long as it was like more or less okay. And they would focus on other things. Like I remember we did this project where like I worked on it and was like, okay, we'll make this okay. Like, let's do it, but it still looks like crap, right? And then suddenly the client is like, oh, but the eye doesn't have the correct dot. I'm like, okay, well, if that's gonna be the feedback, I'm safe. But then when I started like working professionally, like really as a character animation in films and stuff like that, yeah, we need to do that. It's not because it's required. It's because it just makes your work better, easier, more direct. For instance, one of the shows that's in my reel, the first one, the How to Train Your Dragon show, was the first one where I actually like really tried doing reference, like shooting proper reference for acting. One of the reasons was because the director was great. He was a long time animator, and so he had directed a bunch of films already. But he was open to having us show him our reference, because we could act out our reference and not have to sit down and animate first and spend however many hours on getting something showable, so he could then say, no, that's not what the shot is about, right? And so we would be able to show him reference. He would be like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's do this and that. And so now after you shot your reference and you get that feedback, you can go sit down in your computer, start putting the first keyframe, but you know where you're going, right? Different to doing something for like a week or 3 days or something like that, and you go in and say like, no, scrap that, that's wrong. And so that was great because it allowed me to explore more in doing reference. I wasn't good at all in references. I'm getting a little bit better. And so and the next project that I worked on after that one, that was like a struggle for me because like really, I was probably the worst animator in that team, but the people were so good and they were so passionate as well, and they were so good at shooting reference. I was like, oh my God, like I can't wait to see that in the show. It was to the point that at some point they cut a version of the film that was only the references. And that was super funny to watch because everybody's just like playing a character, and you see all of the actions like come out super funny because it's like kids playing at home with the boxes and like just like doing funny acting and stuff like that. And so the next show, when I went to Australia in Animal Logic, I took an acting class, which didn't help that much in pointing me what I could do right, I could do wrong. It was more about fearing, like focusing less on my fear to the camera and focusing more on my performance and what I'm gonna get out of it. Yeah. And basically the teacher was great, and he just basically lifted up my confidence. And so next time, like I finished like the course, so after 2 or 3 weeks on the course, I had to do a shot that was acting, and I shot a reference, and I shot it a couple of times, but I knew more or less what I was aiming for instead of being all awkward. Yeah. And my supervisor and my lead, they loved the reference. They were like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we want. Like it's on the right way. I had other issues with the shot, but that helped me get the shot like 90% in. And so that was great. And so the more I work, the more I want to be able to do that. And the show that I worked now at DNEG, I did shoot reference. Some of the shots would require more, because sometimes, say, you're doing like a robot that's like a ball or something, or maybe whatever, that it's not a human. It's harder for me, at least at this point, to do a reference. And so I'm getting used to it. I'm starting to involve it in my process a lot more.
Gotcha.
And it's all like I was recording a video just before we started talking, because I'm going through my process of animating in that video. And one of the things I would say is, like, you can shoot reference, and there's different ways to shoot it depending on what you want to get out of it. And that's not the only way. I know animators that instead of shooting reference, they just animate in 2D.
2D.
And they do a beautiful animation in 2D. And then when that's approved, they go like, cool, now I'll do it in 3D.
Whatever works for you. Everybody, we're talking and chopping it up with my friend Luciano Muñoz. You've obviously been doing this for a while. What's the biggest lesson that you think that you've learned through your experience so far? I mean, what's the best piece of advice that somebody's ever given you that you were like, wow, okay, this really is a really big piece of advice, really good piece of advice that they gave me?
Okay, I think out of all of them, because I've gotten a lot of advice, but out of all of them, when I was in 2017, I took a class in Barcelona. After years of like not really doing as much animation as I wanted, I went to Barcelona and took a class that was like 10 months. And it was fantastic with a Spanish teacher. And one thing he said like stuck to me a lot, and it's the journey is the reward. So it's not about where you get, but it's more about how you enjoy that process of getting wherever you go, right? Yeah. Because, for instance, you could aim at Pixar all your life, and maybe you make it when you're 60, for instance. And if you look back at your life and your life is crap, you don't feel comfortable, or you don't feel fulfilled by what you lived, then the moment you get there, then that's it. Like, you got there, and then your life is still empty.
Yeah.
Let's say worst case scenario, you didn't get there, right? When you're like at your deathbed, you're like looking back, and it's like, I never made it to where I wanted, and then my life was still crap anyways. Even worse, right? Best case scenario, you make it there, and you look back and you go like, whoa, that was cool, right? Let's go for the next adventure, or let's keep on. And so that's helped me treat my life a little bit more balanced, because sometimes I was like super like workaholic, working until 3 a.m. every day, just working. And sometimes that pays off, but I don't do it like in very long spans. So back in 2017, I was studying, and I would work because I had a goal to accomplish that year, which was getting hired in film industry. And my friends that I was living with, they were like super looking at me at that point, like very weird. It's like, dude, like, we're in Barcelona, let's go party, let's go have fun. And I'm like, yeah, we'll do that, but it's not the right time right now. Like, I need to do this, and I need to focus, because I really, really, really want to be at least good enough.
Yeah.
And it's great, because it paid off. It really paid off. But I don't do that much anymore. Sometimes I get through periods where, for instance, a couple of months ago, I was in crunch time, really. Like, we were like full on production, but then I was also taking a class after work, plus running my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel would take, I don't know, 4 or 3 days a week that I was like focused, like after work, on getting that one video done. And then also I had to cater to my class. Like, my class was at 4 a.m. because it was the teacher was in LA. So I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to class from 4 to 7. then I would stay awake to work. And so, like it was crazy. And obviously the class wasn't only the class, was assignments that you do, you just show in the class. So it was so much work. And I was burning. Like I was like, oh man, this is exciting, but I'm also so tired. But I blame it on the pandemic. I was like, I had nothing else to do anyways, right?
Yeah.
But other times, like you need to find the balance. I think it's good to focus a lot in a certain period that it's limited. It's like when I went to that school, it was 10 months that I did party. Let's not lie. I did party, but instead of like partying every night and every week, I would party maybe once or twice a month. And see friends maybe every other week, so I could have some of that still.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like normally I would be like, if I'm working and I have like friends going to a bar after work, I could go every day, like 1 hour, 2 hours, okay. But I try to kind of keep this balance where I can work, sleep, and do my things, right?
Yeah. I think you have to, because like you said, it can put it together. A project of that magnitude and nature does take a lot, but having a balance in between there, because I always wondered myself, like, do the people at Pixar take vacations because they're always working on films and things like that? And so you, which is a silly question because they have to, but it's like you said, it's such an intensive process. It's such a long process at that. It's like 2 years working on a film. I'm like, okay, well then how do you block out time for a vacation if you're an employee of Pixar, say, and you're working on a 2-year film or, a film that's 2 years,
it's kind of like any project in that regard. When it's a shorter project, like for instance, if you're doing like an advertising, it's rare that you'll take a holiday in between that advertising, right? Yeah. But if you're working in a film, you kind of are entitled to take at least a break or 2 breaks per year. So people would just book when in the productions I've worked, people can just book their holidays at certain periods, and there's some periods where they try, hopefully, that you won't take holidays during that period. Yeah. But most of the time you can take regularly holidays because production and coordination will say, okay, this guy is not here for that week, we'll arrange stuff so that's not a problem. And because it's massive teams, like the last show I worked on, we were something like 70 or 64 animators at some point, something like that. Yeah, and the previous one we were 83, like just animators, just character animators. I'm not talking about the entire show. Yeah. Animal Logic, we ended up being something like 550 at the studio, from a studio that normally is like 200 or something like that. So they blowed up with people, but you if you need holidays, and you have holidays allocated to take, so as long as you communicate them early enough, it's good, so they can plan for it. That's it.
Gotcha. So you were saying that, and everybody, again, we are on sitting down with my good friend Luciano, character animator. You were saying that you're getting better at character animation. What do you love about it? I mean, what is it that you love that makes you want to do character animation?
So when I discovered like working in animation at the beginning in advertising and stuff like that, I figured there's 2 parts that are kind of like the ones that I like the most, and for some particular reasons. And for instance, compositing was because after you see everything kind of like out of the render, you just make it pretty, and you just like add beauty, like the last touch of shininess to everything, which makes it super cool. That was what I liked compositing. And a character animation is because it's the first moment you start seeing performances, where you start making whatever you saw in storyboards become what it's supposed to be, right? Or see those performances fleshed out. And the character animation part, to me, what is more about, it's the acting, it's the performance. It's like creating an emotional, like this teacher that I told you, he told me this definition of film, and it's creating an emotional response in the audience
Yeah.
And I connect that directly to character animation, because when you don't have the character animation in a film or in a, say, in a movie, with like live action movie, if the characters are not there, it's really hard to make an emotional response on anybody, right? So
Yeah.
the moment you get the acting going, that's what makes people feel stuff, right? If you watch Ratatouille, it's a super emotional film,
But it's
but
about
it's all about the characters. Like if you don't care about the characters, you don't care about the film.
yeah,
Right? And that's what I really love about character animation. There's other like nuances about that too, but to me, that's the biggest part, and that's why I also think that the world is shifting a little bit, because with so many new technological improvements and advancements, and we'll be able to hit that a little bit easier, because right now animators basically have to punch keyframes, obviously, to make the performance that they want to make in the best way possible. But with the advent of technology, we'll need to care less about what you do with with the computer itself, and more about your performance.
yeah.
Right? You'll be able to focus more on the performance, because right now, for instance, if I get a director, the director says like, we need to do this shot, and I go like, okay, cool. Like, what do you think of this action? And he would say this, and he would do that. Right? He would say, perfect. That's what will evoke the right emotion for this shot in the movie, etc., etc. Now go do it. And then you spend 3-4 weeks trying to craft that. But if you can get faster from that, hey, let's do this, to it's done, that's what technology is going to change, for me at least.
Yeah.
And I think that's the essence of animation, just being able to create those convincing performances that would make you feel that the character is alive, and make you feel for the characters. Right? Forget that they're just characters in a screen, and feel that they're feeling something.
Yeah, which I think to that point, oh man, the director for The Lord of the Rings and of course James Cameron really kind of leaned into motion capture, that really just take the performance from the actor doing it and putting it into the character. Do you think that's kind of the hybrid thing that you were kind of just talking about, as far as moving?
Yeah, I think that goes into that idea. But to be fair, all those movies that claim to have done only motion capture and facial capture performance with an actor and stuff like that ends up animated by hand. I think there is in the industry this really big thing of, let's sell that we have this technology that really accomplishes this, but at the end of the day, like, you see animators in the back really doing those performances by hand, and the actor's performance serves more of a reference. Because if you think about it, like, maybe Gollum was a little bit of a special case as well, but as far as I remember, I know people that work there, they hand animated everything, because the performance of a human doesn't fit the performance necessarily of another human or of an animal, right? And if the transfer is not one-to-one either, right? Like a character that has big eyes and a small mouth and a long neck will not be the same than somebody that is like me trying to do that performance, right? And as much as you call it motion capture, at the end of the day, you need somebody that would interpret my performance and plug it into the character the same way when we shoot reference, we go and plug that into the characters. More realistic, less realistic, more cartoony, however you want to call it, then it needs to be done by hand, because it needs some interpretation in between, which is what the computer doesn't do, right? The computer doesn't do anything on its own, well, yet. And for instance, then a lot of movies came out with animals like what was it, Mowgli or something like that, where also they claim that they did all this with motion capture to transfer the actors' performances, and you see like animators sitting in the back like, yeah, no, that's not how it goes, man. It's also normal. Like, I experienced it at a lower level when I worked in that studio that I told you.
Yeah.
The big studio in Chile, right? It was called Chile Films, by the way. Like, it's funny. the company had this vision that were selling the machines that they had. So they had like the Inferno, which was like $500,000 back then, right? And instead of saying we have incredible artists with like 20 years of experience doing compositing, they would go like, no, we have this machine that's $500,000.
Yeah.
And so instead of focusing on really the talent behind it, they would focus on that technology because that would set them apart in some way because they could afford it. And so when the company praise too much the artist, the problem that they have is somebody can always poach the artist, right? The technology, for instance, that they develop in-house can't be poached because it's their technology, right? And if they take somebody out of there, nobody has talked about the artist, so the technology is still there. Like I still have the 200 million invested in this thing, right? And so that cannot be taken away from the company. And I think that's on the business side. It's okay, I understand it, but it's not the right way because you're neglecting the artists that you have in your place working for you, and kind of like leaving them aside from what they really did.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Not giving them just.
But it is connected to what you said, as like technology is evolving in that way that we as animators, as artists, can focus more on performance and maybe use some similar kind of tools to use our performance skills to transfer them. Obviously, it will depend on what kind of performance skills you have, and you should probably focus more on being a better actor, more often than not. And as technology progresses, you'll be able to transfer more of your performance in an easier way to the computer.
And I'm a big proponent of, like I said, tools are tools, and it ultimately, like you said, comes down to the artist behind that tool that brings it to life or makes the piece a much better piece. Man, we are really going into it here. Obviously this is going to be a much longer show, a little bit longer show than normally. I want to dive kind of into a little bit of diversity and the industry. But before we go into that, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. So tune in. We'll be right back. And we are back. Please make sure that you, again, check with me on side screen. So I'm pointing way over here. But we are broadcasting live on my LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook page. And we're sitting here chopping it up with my good friend, Luciano Muñoz. Again, please throw some comments or throw where you're tuning in from, because we want to make sure that we give you love. This is a good conversation, probably the most in-depth one that I've had so far. Obviously, Mr. Muñoz doesn't mind us going a little over, and I'm cool with that too.
No problem.
But just to kind of dive in, what are your kind of thoughts on, just having a diverse kind of group in, because obviously, I've come and kind of grown up on the old school type of animation of Disney and Warner Brothers and this and that. And it's, obviously they didn't have or didn't really highlight this diverse sort of culture that's out there to bring in these kind of more rich stories that we are just now starting to kind of see. So what are your kind of thoughts on that in just on the studios that you've been in and moving forward in the industry?
I feel like it's something that's happening way too late. Obviously, it's good that it's starting to happen, but it's super late because I remember since the first time I heard anything about creativity and entrepreneurship, blah blah blah, that the more diverse backgrounds you have on the teams, the better what you were doing was, because you get more different points of views, right? If you get somebody from Chile, somebody from Argentina, from somebody from Canada, from the US, from Italy, etc., 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 you get a much more diverse set of opinions, which impact positively whatever you're doing. And so it's more universal, because when you find those common points between everybody, then it makes something that's more universal, so it appeals to more people. So at the end, you get a product that you can push out to the world that will resonate with more people, right? And we talked about this a little bit before. Like, for instance, I found that Spider-Verse was amazing because of how it portrays like a black main character that kids will feel attracted to. And me being like Latino, half white, kind of a weird mix, because I have Italian roots, and I'm a weird mix, right? I also feel like connected to that.
Yeah.
Because like a first thing you hear is like when the kid is at home, he's like the mom speaking Spanish.
Yeah,
like,
he's half Spanish. His last name Morales.
Morales, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like, wow. Like, I had a classmate with last name Morales. I was like, oh, cool. And so that connects you more as an audience, and I think it's important that we also like, for there's two sides. One of the creative side, like internally, of how this impacts what you're doing, and on the other side is how your audience gets impacted by being closer to the material that you're portraying, right? Whatever you're doing. And for a long time there were no black superheroes, there were no female superheroes, basically, or like you have Wonder Woman, white Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to our industry to acknowledge that, and it's happening. I think it's more still in the words than in the actions, but it also, to be fair, for instance, in the studios that I've worked last 3 years, there's usually, out of a team of, I don't know, 60 or 70, maybe 1 or 2 black people, maybe 10% or 15% female, right? And Latinos and Italians, and like, and rest of Europe, the Europeans, there's a little bit more, but still, like, you can see like this unbalanced thing, and I think the opportunities also are not there much, but also there's lack of trained people, right? In the sense of like, if you get one Latino studying out of 50 in a university, and then that one gets out, maybe he'll have a chance at a job, but then you only had one studying, so like, where's how am I going to hire another one if there's no more coming out of school, right? And that's why, with the advent of like online schools and like more affordable things to study as well, you can cater to more people across the world and from diverse backgrounds, because going to like a standard university here or in the US, as you may know, it's incredibly expensive. So that's basically one barrier for most of us. As I told you, my story, going to Vancouver Film School, like, there was one program was incredibly unpayable by pretty much anybody unless you were rich, and then the other ones that were a little bit more affordable. So that's why I was able to go there. And so it can't just be only in the industry as the studios will be like, oh, well, we should consider these people more. It's not about that only. It's about creating a sort of a chain of things that converge into that idea. And so opening up, like, for instance, there's now a lot of stuff like YouTube, where you can learn on your own. So if you don't have the means to pay for school, you can go learn on YouTube a lot of things, and then hopefully that will help you get hired in what you want to do.
No, I wholeheartedly agree in the fact that now is such a great time for content creators because there are so many different things, so many different online schools that you don't have to be there to learn something really targeted, or a lot of great free software such as Blender or other software out there that really do afford people the opportunity to one, get in that industry and really start to create their own things, or gain more education. Like you said, YouTube is YouTube University. You can learn whatever you want to learn on YouTube. Find out whatever you want to find out on YouTube, for sure.
Yeah, 5 years ago, there were not many YouTube channels directed to animation. Now there's at least 5 that I can point out that are pretty good.
Yeah,
and you can say, okay, cool. Like there's like really valuable information there that otherwise I only learned from somebody else that passed it on to me in by hand, like directly face to face. And I was lucky that every time I take in a class or something like that, because I try a lot, like part of my savings always go to that, just because it will help me learn from more people, and also will help me connect with more people, which in turn, sometimes I get somebody that's amazing and will give me one tip that will change my life.
Yeah.
And so having those channels now means that people are now just not only sharing this information amongst each other, but also sharing it with the world, with whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm curious, because I've heard this a lot from other creatives and other artists. Have you dealt with like imposter syndrome, or has that something that's ever?
if something I'm the king at is the imposter syndrome. And I was telling a friend about this the other day, and she sent me a meme that would say, like, am I really good enough to have imposter syndrome?
Now, that's the first. I've never heard that one before. Am I even good enough to have imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think every artist deals with to some extent or another. There's obviously more people that are more, like some people that are more confident. Yeah. But I found that during like the last projects where I had like immensely talented people working with me, and I value them, and I admire them so much. And one of the crazy things was I realized so many times that they also had a crazy imposter syndrome. Like they would be like, yeah, no, really, I'm not really good at this. And I'm trying, and I've been 20 years working in the industry and I still struggle. And I'm like, seriously, but you're amazing. No, you cannot have this. and it's something, I think it's normal. The important thing is learning how to handle it. I still don't think I can handle it enough yet. Sometimes it's to the point of freezing, to that you sometimes you know what you're supposed to do, and you sit down and you go, and it's like, no, this is not working. This is all crap. This is really not working. How will I look at my director when we go to show the thing? Because like this is bad. This is really bad. So what am I doing? What am I doing here? Like what did they even hire me?
Oh man!
And I got this running gag with some friends. I was like, I have this imposter syndrome, and so I know that I'm crap. I know that I'm not good. So I'll get to a job and I'll stay as long as I can. And when they start figuring out that I'm not good, I'll just leave and take another one until I'll start the process again. So just like leave just early enough so they don't figure it out.
Oh man! So just so you know, even the best deal with imposter syndrome. It's something that's real, and you learn to manage it. You just learn to manage it. I tell you.
In fact, there's a tweet that I have right here. Like, I saved it because it's good to look at it all the time. And a friend of mine, I don't know if you heard about Glenn Keane, right? Glenn Keane, like the Disney animator, doing things across the world, right? And he says, like, not to be afraid of not knowing how to do what I'm supposed to do. Picasso said, I'm always doing that which I cannot do in order that I may learn how to do it. I always figured that everybody was so much better than me, and everybody else seemed to have their path figured out. And secretly, I felt that I was faking it. I always carried that fear around me until one day I discovered that everybody else has that fear. There's a wonderful book called The Art and Fear. I give that book to anyone who works with me because it encourages all of us to use that fear as a spark of energy to attack our creative problems. Dear basketball, and then he talks about their basketball. And this is Glenn Keane talking about his imposter syndrome, right?
Wow.
And so that tells you something. Like like the master of masters is saying that he has imposter syndrome, and that kind of gives you a peace of mind. There's like, okay, this is part of the process. It's part of being an artist. It's part of learning. Also, I think it's, to one extent, a result of being humble, that you humble enough that you know that you don't know everything and that you're learning. And so when you are at this level of humbleness, you can go to the other side of like, no, I really know nothing. But I think it's, if you find a middle ground, I think it's productive, because as he says, it can be a spark of learning more, for like motivation to learn more and to always be open to learning.
Gotcha. Oh man, this has been a awesome conversation for sure, and definitely we haven't even touched half the questions that I wanted to go in. That's going to be, I'm going to reserve those for bringing you back on the show for sure.
Happy to.
I do want to ask you this one question though before we go.
Go for it.
If you could go back in time and stand in front of your younger self, what would you tell your younger self now, going through, and learning the things that you've learned and the point that you're at now? What would you say to your younger self?
It's a hard question, because for on the one side, because I said like that I value your journey, I appreciate all the things that I've done and the things that have happened to me and the things that the choices that I've made over time. But career-wise, I think if maybe I would have pushed harder earlier, like instead of working in feature films, which is what I always wanted to do, 3 years, I would have had like 10 years now of experience. So take the opportunities when they come, and don't overlook your skills. Like I remember I had a teacher that like 10 years ago, he said like, oh, you're really good at this, blah 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 blah, you should like maybe like, if you want, like, he was a teacher that worked at Pixar for a long time. And he's like, if you want, like, I could show him your reel. Like, I know you have like really great work ethic, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, no, like let's take it easy. Like, give me one more year. I'll do better. And during that year, I tried, and it didn't. I wasn't better. I was like, should I send him stuff? Nah, not good enough. And so time passed, and I left myself like in this cloud of comfortableness that I had back home. And yeah, it was all comfortable. I was good enough to cater to what I was doing, but that kind of sunk in a bad way, in the sense of like, sometimes I felt that a lot of that was wasted time. It wasn't wasted time. I know by far that it wasn't, because I learned so many other things that I now use on a daily basis, like stuff, because I had this studio that was like 4 years, and that was I learned how to negotiate. I know how to talk to people. I learned how to value my work, not necessarily comparing myself to other people, but in the sense of like, if somebody asks me to do something, I know how to charge for my work and never feel like I'm getting passed over and like just like working for peanuts, right? And so I feel like I learned from that lesson today. But if I would have learned that lesson earlier, I would have been way better today as an animator than I was back then, right? But other things may have not worked out as well. So it's kind of like weird in that sense. And the other thing that I wish I would have learned earlier was focus on the fundamentals of art. No matter if you're doing motion graphics, if you're doing visual effects, if you're doing film, if you're doing animation, if you're doing any sort of artistic endeavor, focus on the fundamentals, color, drawing, like anatomy, all of those things. Even if you're not doing particularly character animation, will help you, because drawing is the basis of everything. Drawing teaches you how to observe analytically exactly what's going on in an image. And so if you have a good drawing skills, it will help you much more to be a better any of those other things, right? Because it's the fundamentals is observation, so you can understand what's going on. And if you can communicate also with a couple of lines, it will make your life much easier. And so if I would have, like, instead of studying visual communications, which was great, I would have studied something like fine arts, doesn't matter, just like drawing for 2 years. I think I would be much better, and the rest of my career would have been much easier, because learning how to see and how to observe just by doing and just by looking at stuff, it's much harder than when you need to learn how to draw, because learning how to draw just gives you that skill inherently. And so people ask all the time, like, do I need to learn how to draw to be an animator? No, you don't need to, but you're gonna get better much faster if you learn how to draw than if you don't. Right. And that's why a lot of schools, most of like the top schools, for instance, the France school, Gobelin, the animation workshop, the one I attended that I took the professional course, but they have this full-on 3-year course. They make you a drawing test, because they want to know that you have the eye already, that you are trained enough to be able to see that, even if you're gonna learn 3D in the end, or learn whatever other area in the end. It's just because that gives you already a maturity on how to observe things correctly and analytically enough that you can progress much faster.
Gotcha. Now, this has been a great conversation. I'm definitely going to respect your time there, Luciano, and again, looking forward to having you back on the show after the holidays. I know you are jib-jabbed about it before, getting ready to travel back home for the holiday and event. So safe travels for sure. Please make sure that you connect with Luciano. He does some awesome work. You can find him and connect with him on his Twitter channel, Luciano Muñoz.
Wait, there's a typo. There's a dash at the end after Muñoz, because I had this Twitter before back in like 2009, and then one day I decided to close Twitter, and then lost it, and now had to add like a little dash at the end.
Little dash. So let me make sure I got that dash like that.
Sorry, it's the lower one.
Oh, underscore.
Yeah, underscore. Sorry.
Okay. Gotcha. Let me make sure. I want to make sure I get that in there right, so that people can connect with you. Underscore. Okay. Luciano Muñoz underscore. Underscore. He's also on Instagram as well. I hope I got this one right. Luciano Muñoz. Make sure his YouTube channel for sure, because he does Blender tutorials on YouTube. So if you're a Blender user, definitely I'm planning on checking out his YouTube channel, plus picking his brain, because I'm trying to get better at Blender myself. But check out some of his work on his YouTube channel for sure. Let me make sure. Okay, I got you there. Persalve, appreciate you. And so it was a little bit longer one. So I might slice this up into two previews, two little mini shows here, because this was definitely a great conversation for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. It's been amazing. It's been super fun.
Um,
You're amazing. I love that you're doing this show. So I'm looking forward to having another chat if you want in the
oh,
future. Uh,
definitely. I want to thank you, one, for connecting with me in the first place on LinkedIn. It's been such an honor and a privilege developing a friendship with you. You're a fun guy. You have a great sense of humor, and I love talking with you and having these conversations for sure. And look forward to having more conversations and working with you. Uh,
yeah, hopefully one day after COVID goes, we can have a beer together and
Definitely have a beer, come visit you in the UK or even maybe in Chile, wherever you are at the time. Uh,
okay.
and I've told you before, my goal is to have friends on the show, and so that goes way beyond being a guest. So again, I value our friendship, Luciano, and just the journey moving forward for sure. Please hang out for just a few minutes after in the back room after the show so I can talk to you real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
But everybody, uh, thank Mr. Luciano for coming on, making this show such a great show for sure, and definitely look forward to having him back on again. So we appreciate you, Luciano. We give you all the cheers and all the joy there for sure. And we will see Luciano in 2021. Oh man, appreciate it. Guys, it's been such a great show. I've enjoyed sitting down talking with my friend there. He's a funny guy and he has such great knowledge, such great skills that I'm just so honored and privileged that I can call him friend now for sure. Uh, like I said, this has been a much longer show than normally, hour and a half. Like I said, and this is how it normally can go. I may cut this down for uh, uh, posting purposes, but definitely I've enjoyed it, and you can see how fast the time goes by for sure. I appreciate everybody that tunes in and checks out the show, checks it out on the replay, and hopefully you've enjoyed this show for sure. Um, if you want to connect with me, make sure you know a guest, have an idea for a guest, or want to be a guest on the show, shoot me an email at don.terrell, DG Graphics, and let's talk. Always looking to bring on interesting, fun people that fit the bill for sure. So I appreciate that. Again, we are live every Saturday at 3 p.m. Although next Saturday, I will be taking a break again, like I did on Thanksgiving because of the holiday the day after. So I will be back in effect the following next Saturday. So I want to make sure that all of you have a safe and fun holiday wherever you may be going, or if you aren't going anywhere and staying in your respective town, just make sure that you have a safe, great Christmas. And I will probably say, I think that's the second that I'm back. I will see you after the into the new year. Yeah, I will see you into the new year on the next show. So, again, this has been The Color of Motion. I'm Don Terrell, and I appreciate you. And thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, stories come in all shades, for sure. So, with that, have a great rest of the day, and I will check you out in the new year. Peace and love.